Thousands of U.S. troops set to return home are now staying in Europe. That's as the new administration reviews the Trump administration's plan to withdraw troops. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos announced he will step down as company CEO. It's to focus on his other businesses, including the Washington Post and space travel company Blue Origin. And Florida's governor is tackling big tech. He's proposing new laws to combat big tech censorship and the selling of private data and personal information. Tune in to Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. Thousands of U.S. troops currently in Germany are set to stay, at least for now. That's as the Biden administration has placed the Trump administration's plan to withdraw troops from Europe on hold in order to review the decision. According to Politico, the head of the U.S. European Command said the defense secretary is in the middle of conducting a very thorough review. Trump's plan had been to withdraw around 12,000 troops from Germany. Half would have come home, and the other half would have gone to other parts of Europe. Biden has pledged to refresh alliances and was critical of his predecessor's treatment of U.S. allies. Trump had lambasted members of the NATO alliance for not holding up their end of the deal, saying they didn't spend enough on their own defense. Biden's flurry of executive orders have already undone a lot of his predecessor's work. Biden just signed more executive orders regarding immigration yesterday. The three new orders seek to loosen the criteria for asylum, reverse the Trump administration's public charge rule, create a task force for new Americans, develop a strategy to address irregular migration across the southern border, and create a task force to reunify any remaining families that were separated during the previous administration. One of Biden's orders will revoke the Trump administration's order that sought to justify separating children from their parents. The wording here suggests that Trump's policy is what's responsible for family separation, but there's more context to consider. Before Trump took office, a judge ruled that children could not be held in detention centers. This led to an influx of migrants under the impression that if they came as a whole family, they would be let into the U.S. On top of that, the Biden administration is lifting President Trump's requirement that family sponsors repay the government if immigrants receive public benefits. In other words, if an immigrant needs financial support, a sponsor has to sign a contract with the U.S. to say they will support the immigrant until they can take care of himself. If the immigrant receives welfare instead, the sponsor must pay the U.S. back. This is a way to ensure immigrants will be self-sustaining when they come to the States. But this is not simply a Trump policy, it's a law. Other actions include a task force on New Americans, which is charged with promoting immigrant integration and inclusion. The Biden administration plans to implement a three-pronged approach to irregular migration in Central America. It also promises to collaborate with other countries and NGOs to provide opportunities to asylum seekers and migrants closer to home. Now let's talk big tech. Florida is tackling big tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google. The state's governor says he won't put up with any interference with elections.
Over the years, however, these platforms have changed from neutral platforms that provided Americans with the freedom to speak to enforcers of preferred narratives.
Governor Ron DeSantis is demanding change from big tech.
Floridians should have the privacy of their data and personal information protected.
The Republican governor laid out harsh penalties that big tech could face under a new bill. For example, if a technology company deplatforms a candidate during an election, it will face a daily fine of $100,000 until the candidate's access to the platform is restored. Or if a big tech company manipulates a user's access to political content or candidates using algorithms, it would also face daily fines. And there are other measures too. If one election candidate is promoted above another one in an unequal manner, the value of that free promotion would be recorded as a political campaign contribution. And this would be enforced by the Florida Elections Commission. The move follows reports of tech giants suppressing news that was unfavorable to then-candidate Joe Biden, while banning sitting President Trump from their platforms. Florida's House Speaker Chris Sprowls commented on the new bill, saying the 5 families of darkness, Facebook, Twitter, Google, Amazon, and Apple, won't go unchecked here in Florida anymore. Governor Ron DeSantis says that companies are discriminating against citizens when they change their rules as it suits them, without warning or consistency. The new bill will also empower the Florida Attorney General to bring action against big tech companies under Florida's Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act if they violate the new policies laid out in the bill. Tech companies would have to give users advance notice of a rule change and before shutting down an account and apply the rule consistently. Twitter, Facebook, and Google did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Speaking of platform censoring accounts, Twitter has shut down another account. This time, it's the official account for pillow and bedding company MyPillow. The company's CEO, Mike Lindell, used the MyPillow account to circumvent his own ban from Twitter. Lindell is a friend and outspoken supporter of former President Trump. He was banned from Twitter a week ago over his repeated claims that the presidential election was rigged. Another post on the account accuses Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey of being tied to election fraud. Following Lindell's personal Twitter ban, companies including Bed Bath & Beyond and Kohl's stopped selling MyPillow products. The retailers claim it was a performance-driven decision, but Lindell maintains that they were pressured into dropping him because he spoke out against alleged election fraud. But some companies like Costco say they will continue to carry MyPillow products. And now let's turn to e-commerce giant Amazon. The company's founder, Jeff Bezos, the billionaire founder of Amazon.com, is stepping down from the CEO role. He's been with the company since the very beginning in 1994, turning it from a simple online bookseller into one of the biggest technology companies in the world. Bezos made the announcement Tuesday in a letter to employees posted on the company's website. He will stay on as executive chairman of the board. He told his workers, being the CEO of Amazon is a deep responsibility, and it's consuming. When you have a responsibility like that, it's hard to put attention on anything else. Taking over the CEO role will be Andy Jassy, who will assume the top spot in the third quarter. Jassy also goes back quite a ways. He joined Amazon back in 1997 and is the head of the company's lucrative cloud computing unit, Amazon Web Services, or AWS. If that sounds familiar, that's the cloud service that kicked Parler off. Bezos said he will now have more time for his other endeavors, including his ambitions in space and his ownership of the Washington Post. He wrote in his letter, as executive chair, I will stay engaged in important Amazon initiatives, but also have the time and energy I need to focus on the Day One Fund, the Bezos Earth Fund, Blue Origin, the Washington Post, and my other passions. I've never had more energy, and this isn't about retiring. As a whole, company sales and profits easily top forecasts as Amazon joins the rare club of companies topping $100 billion in quarterly revenues. It continues to benefit from a surge in online shopping during the global health crisis, and consumers flock to its site to do their holiday shopping. But Amazon is also seeing some trouble areas. It's been launching a full-fronted PR effort to sway union workers in its Alabama fulfillment center. According to a Bloomberg article, the company is trying to convince nearly 6,000 workers to reject the calls for unionization. Amazon is also pushing for the warehouse union to vote in person as opposed to voting by mail. The U.S. Labor Board is allowing mail-in voting for the election because of the pandemic. Ballots have to be received by late March, but Amazon wants to delay the election so it can take place in person with no votes by mail. It says only about 3% of its workers tested positive for the CCP virus in the first week of January, and it says that doesn't count as an outbreak. Amazon says, we believe that the best approach to a valid, fair, and successful election is one that is conducted manually in person. Union organizers and Amazon set up competing websites. Workers say a union would give them the right to collectively bargain over their working conditions, and Amazon would need to legally follow the guidelines. But Amazon alleges they already have workers covered with high wages and benefits. It writes, why pay almost $500 in dues? There's so much more you can do for your career and your family without paying dues. The Bloomberg report notes, with the election running through late March, the stakes are high for both sides. On one side is the reputation of the labor movement, and on the other is the Amazon behemoth. Amazon is agreeing to pay $62 million to settle charges for its delivery drivers. The money is to make up for tips the drivers would have gotten. The Federal Trade Commission said Tuesday Amazon kept the money from drivers despite promising them they would get it. The FTC says it's been going on for 2 years. The drivers are part of Amazon's Flex business. It's where people pick up and deliver packages for Amazon using their own cars. It started back in 2015. The drivers are not Amazon employees, but rather independent workers. Workers get $18 to $25 per hour, and Amazon promised they'd also get 100% of the tips from customers on the app. But the FTC said the next year, in 2016, Amazon switched to a lower hourly rate and made up the difference with the tips without telling the drivers about the change. The FTC said that resulted in Amazon gaining $62 million in tips at the driver's expense. Now Amazon is paying the amount back to settle the charges, and the drivers will get their dues. But what do you think about all these changes lately? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.